question, which means I'm audible. Right. So next check is like, is my presentation visible? Are you able to see my PPT? Okay, maybe Ashok can confirm it. Yeah, perfect. Right, all right, okay. And okay. All right, so good morning, everyone. And I hope people will join a bit later. And so what I'll do is like, I'll just briefly introduce about myself, and which was actually done by Ashok. And I thank Ashok for introducing me very briefly. But I'll also introduce myself about what I do and how I am working on with some of the projects I deal, and also I'll talk about some of my educational qualifications related to consumer psychology, right? And as of you know, but some of you may know, some of you may not really know, I worked as an assistant professor with Sona School of Management from 2011 until 2017. And by the time, like, I was teaching consumer behavior and marketing related subjects in Sona School of Management. And later on, then I wanted to upgrade myself and then wanted to learn more about consumer psychology. Hence, I did my master's in the UK, where I did a project where it involves eye tracking. Right? So I studied people about how people move inside the store and what they do, and we did a kind of a video recording of their movements inside the store to understand how people make decisions when they are buying in a retail store. And then out of my interest, since I want to continue my academic career, and I wanted to do my PhD, and that was in my wish list and to do in a top university. Then I started to apply to different universities across the globe, especially in the European continents. And then I fortunately got selected in TUM School of Management. And TUM School of Management is a triple crown accredited institute, which has quite a lot of specializations in terms of management and technology. So it's not only specialized in management, it is also dwelling in the area of like surface around some technology as well. Okay. And so I hope we can officially begin the session in terms of like trying to get into advances of consumer research. And this is a very niche topic, and I could see that we may not really get a lot of people in terms of understanding the nuances behind this topic, because this is pretty niche in terms of if you're really interested in consumer psychology, and then if you're really interested in research, and then you are the right person to be here in the session. Okay, and let's begin the session in terms of introducing you to the topic. Yeah. In today's session, I'll focus especially on the traditional marketing research technique that is already available in the market, and which is also still used, and it is also really good that these techniques are predominantly now used in the area of consumer research. And later on, I'll briefly introduce you about consumer neuroscience, and also tell you what are the different tools and techniques that is available in this arena. And also, I'll briefly introduce you what is neuromarketing and what is the difference between consumer neuroscience and neuromarketing. Since I work a lot with eye tracking, and I'll provide you a very detailed overview of eye tracking. And then I'll also talk about some of the research projects that I work with eye tracking. And meanwhile, when I'm covering consumer neuroscience, I'll also cover some of the studies that is normally quoted or cited in the area of consumer research. So look at traditional marketing research, right? So many of you know some of the techniques, and if you know some of the marketing research techniques, will you be able to post it in the chat box before I begin my session, like in the sense of like beginning my topic, because it is really good to know whether you know some of the traditional research marketing research tools, right? You can just post in chat box so that I'll come to know that, okay, you know some of the techniques that is available in the market that is predominantly used by many of the companies. Let me just give like a couple of minutes so that I don't want to be so monotonous, like I am talking and then this talking will be really boring. So in between we'll have a little kind of activity, and then we'll go ahead. I also believe that what happens is that the chat box messages come a bit later, and I would recommend you to post it. And in the meanwhile, I'll just go through it a bit later as well. Okay, let's wait for a couple of seconds. Any marketing techniques, any market research techniques that you know or you are aware of, and feel free to post it in the chat box. Okay, so one information is called as Delphi method, and the other thing is like coming up here. What's like consumer survey, and good to hear that. Yeah, Delphi method, consumer survey. All right, so let's get into the part of introducing traditional market research, right? In traditional market research, and what's predominantly used is surveys, and the surveys can be classified into four, like in-person survey where you go on an interview, get some response from people, and that's what we normally do, right? So we have a questionnaire, and we go to the manager and then ask them like, what do you feel about it? What's happening within the company? Or it's like you call the person and then ask them about like this is a survey, and you have a structured questionnaire, and with the questionnaire you will basically ask them what's happening within customer satisfaction, or it's like within about manager's opinion or other things. And similarly, you can also send some post, or it's like this called as mail survey, which is a term that is used in the Western world, and then you can collect some information from people. And also, and nowadays we are moving online, and even on of my study, what we did is like we use a tool called as Amazon Mechanical Turk, where we access population in the US, and it's a very beautiful tool. Like if you upload your survey like today evening, and then you will get all the responses in the very next day, and the data analysis and everything else becomes really easy, and your research project will get, you can just complete the project in few days time, right? If you have a proper hypothesis, if you have a proper research study design, and you can basically complete that. But it does not really come for free, it's costly, but still. And if you're looking for like time shortage and other things, then you can use Amazon Mechanical Turk. Okay. And a similar platform that is available in India is like your SurveyMonkey, but I'm not really sure that how it works. But we are trying to use that one as well in one of the studies, that we are trying to look at how people think about water conservation, and then how people are can be influenced to buy product which is saving water. Right? And the next thing is called as focus groups, where you invite a set of people who are the proposed customers, or like a target market, and then you ask them a few questions, and you will be a person as a researcher, you will be a person who guiding the entire discussion, and then you can ask them questions to reveal about their preferences, and then their thought process, or it's like their satisfaction related to the product. Or else like you can have a one-on-one interview as it's kind of a very direct interview to a person. And then you also have like observation, where it's like one of the things that we did is when we work with eye tracking, we basically do observation, but in a very different way. And next one is called as field trials. You go and apply, send the product to the market, and then try to understand how the product is performing in the market in the real world. Right. But apart from this, there are further techniques which is predominantly used in the consumer science, which is especially from psychological perspective, is called the Saltman metaphor elicitation technique, where people are asked to think aloud in terms of they will collect some images that is related to how they feel about the product. Imagine that you are thinking about Apple now, then we'll ask you to collect pictures that is related to Apple, your opinion related to Apple products. And then you paste all these pictures on a chart, and then you will be asked, and then the researcher will look at the pictures, and then he'll see, okay, if there is a sad picture, and when you say that say a brand called as Apple, that means he's not really happy with that particular product, that Apple brand. And so that can be decoded. And this is the only one patented research technique that's available, and it was from Harvard University. And the person who came out of this method is called Saltman. And then you can have a projective techniques, where you can ask people to think about some of the situation and then ask them how they will react. Or else you can also ask them to do a storytelling. And similarly, there is a thematic apperception test where you give some images and you will ask them to write a story, or like ask them to describe that particular picture and get an idea. Right? And these are some of the techniques that is which is available in as a traditional market research. Okay. But I'm not going to talk about this because this is already existing in the market and it's been used. But I will talk about the shortcomings of these methods, and then move on to the consumer neuroscience area. Right? And the problem with this traditional market research is that it is always subjected to personal bias. In the sense, I might have a different opinion about a product, and then I might skew the entire research arena, or like the question that is posted by the researcher. For example, say if I hate Apple um, emotionally, right? Even though the questioner is on the technical aspects of the product, trying to compare Samsung with Apple, then I'll say, like, since you personally hate Apple, and you will say that, okay, you will give the ratings like at the worst, but you are not actually cognitively evaluating how the attributes are different, right? So you are not weighing, for example, say if Apple has 8 GB RAM and then Samsung has like 4 GB RAM, since if you look at the perspective of the attribute, and 8 GB is far more higher compared to 4 GB, right? But what you'll do is, like, since you do not really like Apple, and then you'll say like, I hate Apple, and then you will not give the rating that is required for that particular study. And it's not really rational, and it's more emotional in nature. So it is always subjected to kind of a personal bias. And can also have, in terms of the researcher perspective, where the researcher can also have some sort of error called as judgment bias, where when he's doing some sort of observation study, when he does observation, he might carry his research idea in his mind, and also he might evaluate the participants in a very different way based on his own judgments, and that might skew the results that has been produced by the research. Okay. And later on, you can also have some sort of group bias or confirmation bias, and these things happen when you are in group decision making, especially in terms of the focus group, right? When you're doing focus group, and if in the focus group, what happens is that people in general they might gravitate towards one point, right? If there is one person who is seen as a very good decision maker, and everybody will go and gravitate towards his ideas, and they will accept that idea, right? And also, as a person, we will also have our own ideas. We'll try to confirm that evidences, right? Imagine some of the situation for confirmation bias, where if you ask who is the best captain for India, and then Indian cricket team, and people will say MS Dhoni, right? And what we'll do is, like, we will try to collect evidences that can support this idea of saying MS Dhoni is the right person for the team, right? And we'll not accept Kohli because we do not like Kohli, because we have more affect or like emotion towards Dhoni. Then we'll collect only evidences to support Dhoni, but we'll not collect evidences to support Virat Kohli. Okay, and also it can also come to the other kind of a problem called as placebo effect, and this is predominantly known to many of the people, right? So the placebo effect is like, you give a medicine, and people think that that works on them, and then they will report it. Imagine you have two groups. In one group, and these two groups are treated for headache, right? And in one group, you give them a pill, or it's like a drug, which can cure headache. And there is another group which is also getting a drug, but this drug is not actual. It's not an actual medicine, but it is a kind of a placebo. It's like, that's a kind of a vitamin pill that's also like kind of a pill that just will not really cure headache, right? But since what happens is that the group 2, where they had this placebo, was like a kind of medicine which is not going to solve their headache, still, because they took it, and then they'll report that they have they have reduced, they were able to reduce headache because of consuming this pill. And this placebo effect might also be there when you're conducting experimental studies. Okay. And then there is next aspect called as question order bias, right? And in the way that you're asking the question in the survey can basically skew your results. And we have a video later on to understand this a bit better. And the next one is called as learning effect. What do you mean by learning effect? Because people are exposed to surveys all the time, right? And imagine that you are going to, because most of you are, as a participant here, you're all exposed to business, or it's like you're all exposed to psychology, and hence you will know what you're trying to work on, right? Hence, when you're trying to respond to a survey, and you basically assess the questionnaire on your own and try to skew the results as well, right? And that might be a kind of, if you have encountered like hundreds of surveys and you know how to respond to the survey to be to make survey better, right? And that might be also there. And also in terms of selection bias, for example, say this happens with most of the project study that is done in MBA schools, right? Especially the B schools in India. What happens is that imagine that I'm going to give you a questionnaire to assess perception of people who of like about a brand, right? Imagine that you're going to measure perception related to Triveni car company, or it's like towards some of the like any other hotel that is in Salem, right? What happens is that you will go and ask people, like the students will basically go and ask their friends, right? What happens is that they select the participants who are supposed to be there in for the study. Hence, uh, if you are a fan of Triveni car or the car services or like motors, and you'll also have close networks who are also liking the same thing, right? And fundamentally you are selecting the participants on your own, and then you are not really selecting the sample that is going to represent the study in total, but it is basically a kind of a very selected group, and this group can basically skew results, right? And these are the problems that is, no, I listed very few of the problems when it comes to traditional market research, right? So hence, we are supposed to overcome this one. And let's have a look at the video of questionnaire bias. And I'm not really sure whether this audio is available to you, but it should be. And let's watch it for a while. It's just about 2 minutes. Okay, so in terms of the question that is posted, right? So I cannot really say that as a question or a bias. Like the way the question that is asked is quite different, right? When you are asked a question, and if you are asked like in such a way that they want to get the response, they can basically get it, right? And that's a problem when it comes to these kind of traditional market research. Hence, we are like working, or like I cannot really say that we are working. Like many of the researchers are working in this field called as consumer neuroscience, and the consumer neuroscience is basically understanding people's decision making, or like their thoughts from the mind, rather than asking on their own. So where people will not really respond to the questions, and their thought process and their mind will be read by some of the machines, or like some of the apparatus, and then people will start to understand how these things work, like how people think about a product, or like of a price, or like of a brand, right? And what is consumer neuroscience in general? Like there are like different tools and theories that is available, and this actually stems from different disciplines called marketing, neuroeconomics, and also consumer psychology, and also neuroscience. Okay, and we apply these techniques to understand how people make decisions. And especially this tries to read the mind of people, and this side tries to read the cognitive process and then the mental process behind people's decision. And we can also get this term when we study consumer neuroscience, and then this is called as neuromarketing, right? And neuromarketing is used in parallel with consumer neuroscience, but there is a subtle difference between these two approaches, where consumer neuroscience is applied by researchers like me, or from some of the researchers in the Western world, where they try to understand the perceptual, attention, and memory and emotional processes behind decision making, or like the preferences that people have. However, if these techniques, that is sort of like the scientific principles, are applied in the at the benefit of industry or businesses, and that is called as neuromarketing. So neuromarketing is the commercialized version of consumer neuroscience, where consumer neuroscience is like trying to enhance and upgrade, or like try to understand the mental processes behind people's decision making. Okay. And if you want to understand the neuromarketing techniques, and you are supposed to really get into this area called as process tracing. And process tracing is a way that how trying to trace evidences in terms of what kind of process people do when they make a decision. Okay, it might be daunting a bit when it comes to the term, but when you get into the techniques that is used in process tracing, you'll understand about this particular topic. And process tracing in general, it aims to understand the causal mechanisms. For example, say if I like a brand, especially like Samsung or something, and then there might be some sort of cognitive or like mind-oriented decision that I'm taking, right? I have some affinity or affection towards it. Especially imagine that your mom bought you a watch, and then she gave it to you, and probably what happens is that that is more emotional and is more affective in nature, and you want to hold it for a long time, right? And what happens is now some sort of neurons in your brain will get activated because it is from your mom, especially the area called as amygdala, which is a part of emotions of your brain, and that place will get activated, right? But this cannot be studied with a traditional marketing technique, but this can only be studied with the process tracing methods, right? In general, the process tracing methods are divided into 4 categories, and one is called as subject reports, where the subject on their own will report, which is quite similar to the traditional market research, but it's not the best way that we can work with. But the next one is called as movement-based measures, and where your eye tracking and mouse tracing will come in. And the next one is called as peripheral psychophysiological techniques. Right? And the last one is called as neural techniques, where the fMRI and then MEG and EEG will come in. Okay, so I'll explain those things one by one. Let's get into that. So in terms of the basic methodology, that is your subject reports, and you have like 3 aspects. One is called an aspect listing, where imagine you are given a set of product, I was like, you are asked to make a decision to buy a camera. Right? And when you want to buy a camera, and you will be asked like, what are the attributes that is really important for you, and you will list them and also order them. Especially, what are the things that you look into when you want to buy a camera? You'll look for the pixels, or look for the lens type, and also you look for the brand, right? And then you'll be listing these things on your own, and then you will say that, okay, what is really important on your aspect? Especially, you'll say how you will make a decision, whether you look into the brand first, or whether you look into the megapixels first, or so whether you look into the lens type first, and you'll explicitly say in a writing that these are the important attributes, and then you'll also say that, okay, based on the importance, you will order them as well. Okay, and this will be given to the researcher, and then the researcher will make a decision. Okay, how these things are working, especially when it comes to your own decision making. Okay, and next one is called as experience sampling, and this is kind of enhanced version of your dairy method, right? And here you will record your patterns, or like patterns of purchase on a daily basis. Imagine that you're trying to buy some groceries for your family, and you will basically record every single thing that you're doing for that purchase. Right? And then you'll say that, okay, today I bought these many products, and then I spent this much money, but you will maintain a kind of record, and then you'll track your expenses. And this tracing will basically help a researcher to understand how people are getting some information. Right? And the next one is called as verbal protocols. And imagine that you're making a decision, and when you're taking a decision, you'll be asked to basically, say aloud. Imagine you are trying to buy a computer, and then the researcher will basically ask you like, okay, now if you're looking at the computer, and then you will be asked like, okay, so do you think the brand logo is important for you? And instead of the researcher asking, and you will say that, okay, now I'm looking into the brand logo of the computer, and now I'm looking into the attributes of the computer in terms of like price, in terms of other things. Okay, and but still, what happens is that with all these tracing methods, this is again subject to the biases that is mentioned earlier, right? Kind of personal bias, or like the bias, like selection bias and other things. Hence, there's more advanced techniques that is available, which is called as movement-based process tracing. Yeah. And in this process, what people will be asked to do is like, they'll be asked to, they'll be basically given a board, and in the board, there will be concealed stickers, and there will be information behind the stickers. And imagine that you are asked to buy a cell phone, or like a mobile phone, and all the information that is related to the mobile phone will be concealed over there. And now people will be asked to search for this information on the board, and they will have to open up a slip and then reveal it, right? And this, if the slip is revealed, and if he is going to revisit the slip again and again, and that means that particular information on the slip is really important for his decision making. Right? And this will be tracked by a researcher who will note down, okay, what are the slips that he has, the participant has basically looked into, and also the decision that he made at last will also be noted down, right? But there is an enhanced version of this information board that is called as mOFC Web, and this can be used by researchers in India, which is not really costly, which is free. And let's have a small demo of that one. Okay. I'll go for a new share. And this I will show you. Okay, so here now you can see I'm opening up a new browser, right? And in this one, we can see how this mOFC Web works, right? And this is especially, it will work if you are trying to study about judgment and decision making as a of consumers, and this is really useful. Okay. And let's go to the demo page of this website, and we can give some random name, and condition is equal to 1. And if you start the demo, and it will open up a new tab. Okay. And I hope this tab might not be visible, hence I'll go for the new tab again. Yeah. I hope now you're able to see the tab, right? In this tab, you can see there are like concealed boxes. And as I told you, right, in the earlier case, which is a kind of a normal board, which is kind of a notice board in your office, and informations are concealed within the behind the screen, like behind the box, behind the slips, and you're supposed to open it, right? And here in the Mouse Lab web, and you can also see the similar approach where some of the information is behind this particular box, right? And people are supposed to, if they want to reveal the box, they are supposed to move their mouse over there on the top, and then they will be able to find the information behind it, right? And let's not worry about this particular example. The other example will be really interesting. For example, in this case here, and we have camera B and camera A, and the price of these options are also given here, right? But imagine if I'm really interested in features rather than the price, then the participant will basically go here, and they will stay for a long time if this is the most important attribute, right? And next you will go to this one, then they'll compare here. And these mouse movements is basically recorded by the system, and it will produce the data. And this data can be used for analysis, and it basically produces voluminous data, and it is very good compared to the survey or any other research, right? Then you will be able to understand, okay, what are the options that people are looking into when they are buying some product, right? And mostly people go from left to right, and that pattern can also be studied, whether they are starting here or here or here, where they looked into the, which attribute or like which of the features is really important for them at the first place, and what is they are considering. Right? And also we can they can also select the subject the option, like either they want to select camera A or camera B based on the features that they looked into, right? And this is a very good advanced technique to try and trace what people are looking at, like what people will want. Okay. And let's get into the PPT back again. So let me share it. Okay. Now we are back to the PPT, and we understood that how Mouse Lab Web can be used for consumer research. And the next important thing that I want to talk about is called the movement-based process tracing, because it is the movement of the mouse or movement of people's eye or movement of any other things, and that is traced, right? And in this case, we are going to talk about something called as eye tracking, right? And this eye tracking, basically people can study about the attention and then information processing strategies that is applied by people. If you look at here, and this is a kind of a depiction of eye tracking, and there are different kind of eye tracking available, and this is a static eye tracking, which cannot be moved by a participant, right? But there are in my earlier master's thesis, when I studied about people's shopping navigation and their behavior, we use a mobile eye tracking, which is like you can wear it like a glass, like a Ray-Ban glass, and then you can basically see what people see, right? And also we can see what which part of the shop that they are looking at. Like you can basically look at the point which people are looking at, right? And you can also see from this picture here, you can see this lady is looking at some of the points in the display, right? And imagine that now you are listening to the lecture, and you will fix at some of the at some points of this picture, right? And imagine you might be looking at the lady's hair or like the eyes, and then you'll see where she's looking at, right? And this is called as the point where you fix is called as the gaze point, right? And this can be tracked by an eye tracker, which is available with a lot of different private companies. And these eye tracker is basically has a camera, and then it sends some sort of infrared rays, and this infrared rays will also be tracked, flashed on the eyes, and this eye, based on this movements, and the IR will basically look at where people are looking at that display. And this data will be processed, and we can basically look at what people are looking at, and then where they are paying attention to. Okay. And when it comes to eye tracking, what are things that they will really look into? Because this is what I do. It's like with my professor, I do this kind of study where we look at the fixations. Right? And what is fixation? Or like saccades or fixation duration transitions. It's pretty easy with the demo, but initially I'll tell you what are they. Right? Fixations is something where you are having an attention, or like you are focusing on one single location. Right? You might be looking at the logo here, and if you're looking at that point, and that is where you're fixating it. Right? And when you're reading and you'll not fix at one point, right, you'll basically rapidly move your eyes. If you start reading from here to here, you'll not have a fixated look at one particular point, but you will basically move faster. And that rapid movement is called as saccades. Okay. And in the next case, you might fix at some point, and then you will stay for a longer time, and the duration is measured, and duration is called as fixation duration. Right? And as I told you about the mouse tracing, it's like mouse lab web, where you basically move from one point to other point, and the attribute when you look at different attributes, and that is called as transition. Okay, but I'll also provide an example here later on. Let's also look at what are the things that we can do with eye tracking. Okay, this is one heat map that is generated from the eye tracking data. And this study was conducted by Google, and they wanted to see how people search when they are browsing online. Okay, especially when they're using Google search engine. Okay? And because they want to prove to the businesses that people will look more into the first 3 or 4 links that is given in the site, right? In the Google search, right? Then only they can position themselves and then make money. And then they can say that, okay, if you place your advertisements here on the top 3 or like top 4 links, then basically you can get more attention of people and then do it. And this is plotted, or like this graph is created with eye tracking data, where you can see the red zone here, and this is basically your highest attention span, right? And it will become more hot and hot. This is called as heat map, and where the attention is high. Right? If many people have looked into these places, and this will become really red. Right? And if you look at the periphery, this is kind of greenish. But on the other areas, for example, say these areas are not highlighted with the green or red, which means like people have never looked into that area. Right? And when they looked into this, they also look into the sidebar and the sponsor links, which means people pay more attention to this area rather than the bottom. So this basically says to the businesses that you are supposed to spend more money on the search engine optimization, or it's like trying to spend money on Google Ads to put the links on the top so that people have more attention, and then they can basically make money. Okay. And I talked about like fixations and then transitions, right? Now you can see this is called a scan path. Like each and every eye movement is recorded, right? And then it will basically say where from where they started and then where they moved. So this is 1 here. They started here and then they moved to 2, and then basically you have 3, 4, and 5, and this is called a scan path. This is how your eyes move across some of the displays, or like some of the websites, and they'll fix at different points. And if there is something like bigger circle, and that the bigger circle represents that they have fixated at more, and since they have looked at that point more. Okay. And this is my own research study where I did eye tracking, and then we did an analysis, right? And the arrow which is going as an animation, right? And this animation is basically shows how people moved across this particular choice set. Right? They initially start here. This will start again, right? So this will initially start here and then move on the top, and then they'll go here and here. Right? And you can see they moved from this price to this price, and this is what I mean by transition. Right? And this is also another transition. So there are 3 transition, like 2 transition between these 2 attributes. Right? And you can also see there are another 3 transitions at the bottom of the stimuli. Okay, and this is also called as gaze replay. Okay? And this is all eye tracking, and we'll move on to the other things. And the other things are called as a joystick or slider bar, where people will be asked, given a pen or digital pen, they will be asked to report how they feel about that particular word or like a particular brand. And this movement of the digital pen, where if they feel positive, they can move upward. If they feel negative, they can move downward. And this movement will be recorded. Right? And if you like a brand really much, and you will move from the center point to the top really fast, right? If you're thinking about the brand, and then your mouse movement will be very slow, right? And this will be tracked, and this is called as joystick slider bar, which is not really used much in terms of consumer research, but there's potential to use that, right? Because it's not used, which means we can really use it. And there is something called as mouse tracking, where people can basically use this mouse tracking as a measure. This is different from mouse lab web. So how does mouse tracking work, right? For example, say if I'm in this PowerPoint, and I can basically measure how my mouse is moving here and here, and this can be tracked. And this, but the location and how long I stayed here in this particular word, and this can be tracked, and then this can be studied. Yeah, and also there is something called a trajectory of the mouse, right? If you are here at the center point, and if you want to go to the joystick bar here on the top here, and how long do you take, and what kind of angle do you take? Do you really go fast like this, or do you go on a curvature, right? And this angle of differences will be studied, and that can be used for to understand how consumers are making. And then especially when they want to click a buy button in the Flipkart web page or like Amazon web page, that can be easily studied. And similarly, people are nowadays interacting with a lot of displays in shops, right? And imagine that you have a digital signage board, and then if it is an interactive signage board, and people go click in each and every different point, right? And those different points and how they click and then how they react to this display boards can also be tracked, and that can also be measured, right? And next is called as peripheral psychophysiology, and I'll not focus much on this aspect, but I'll tell you basically what is what, right? And we can measure the pupil dilation of consumers, right? Imagine if I talk about the most amazing things in the world, or like wonderful things in the world, right? Your pupil in the eye, within the eye, can like expand. Like if you're surprised, and your pupil eye can expand, and this can be measured with the eye tracking, right? And if you're really happy with the brand, or if you're really sad with the brand, and the pupil dilation will automatically tell you or whether what's really happening in your mind. Okay, and this can be tracked with eye tracking as well. And the next aspect is called electrodermal activity, which is called as skin conductance, right? If you're really if you're in anxiety, if you're in stress, what happens is your skin will basically produce a lot of different no, different sort of it will have heat, or it will produce sweat, and these things can be measured. But this not, we do not really have some sort of evidences, or like this is not really used much in consumer research, but this can be potentially used in the area of, like, for example, say and you want to think about how people feel when they are staying in your resort or a holiday, and maybe you can take few people whether they are feeling good or bad, but also study with the help of like skin conductance, right? And if they are really feeling stressed staying at your hotel, then they might have more sweat, and then they'll use their AC really high, right? But still, there's not much higher order hypothesis for this particular measure, right? But we can use it. And also there is something called heart rate, right? I think people, if you're playing PUBG, and you'll know that when the enemy is coming near to you, right? As a student, you will definitely know this, right? And your heart rate will increase, right? And this can be also studied, but still there is a limited hypothesis in this particular domain, right? Which is not really available much. And the next one is called as facial action encoding system, or like facial video. And imagine I'm going to ask you some questions about a brand, and I'll also record your facial reactions. And your face can basically reveal, it's like in Tamil, basically, they will tell you that the face is the index of the mind, right? And your face will reveal what kind of emotions, what kind of reactions that you're feeling about a brand, right? There's a very good saying in Tamil, but I could not remember now. But I think you will know it. Now let's have a look at how emotions can be decoded from the facial expressions. There are like 6 basic emotions. In terms of fear, and you have a different sort of face. When you're in anger, you have a tight lip, and then your eyes will be wide. And you're sad, your eyes will shrink a bit, and then your lips will frown. And if you're disgusted, when you're not happy with the smell of a hotel, or like when you're entering into theater, if you're not feeling good, and then you'll have some sort of disgust, and where your nose, the movements or your muscles near to your nose will shrink, and then you'll go on the top of your lip. In your joy, when you're really happy, and you'll have an open mouth, and you'll have a very nice frown here near to the eyes on here, and that can be recorded. And similarly, if you're surprised, and your eyes will bulge, and then you'll also have an open mouth, and this can be coded, right? These things can be coded with. This is possible when you record people's face, okay? And then, but this also has some sort of problems with facial action encoding system. And if you want to know more about this facts, and you can refer to Paul Ekman's book, okay? And next, we'll move on to the last part of our lecture, where we talk about the neural techniques. And one is called as EEG. And this is EEG machine, where we can measure the brain's activity. Right? And so far, what we did is like we looked at the psychological, physiological movements, physical movements of people, and also psychophysiological measures. But now we are getting into the brain level, right? Because the brain takes most of the decision, right? And here, each and every part of your brain has some sort of role to decision making. And that can be tracked with some instrument called as EEG, which basically captures the electrical impulses of the brain, and then it records, and then it sends to a device, and then we can identify the pattern. Okay. And the next one is called as fMRI technique, where people you might know from some of the hospitals, if you have went through, there are some MRI machines. And this one is called as functional magnetic resonance imaging machine. And this will basically measure how the blood flow is happening within the brain. Okay? And if there is if some part of the brain requires more blood, which means it requires more oxygen, and this oxygen level within the brain is measured, and this will be tracked. And this technique is predominantly used, and which is costly, but still used in the Western world to understand how people think about brands. Okay, and I'll tell you one example, 2 examples from this fMRI technique. They are prominent studies in neuromarketing, or it's like consumer neuroscience. One infamous study is called Coke versus Pepsi, and we still this was studied in 2004, but still we have a kind of debate whether Pepsi is good or Coke is good. And you can see there is a brain image, and this was basically done in this fMRI machine, where people were lying down and they were given Coke or Pepsi. And since they are lying down, they were given with the straw, right? And with the straw, they will get the Pepsi or Coke, but they will not be told whether they are drinking Pepsi or Coke. And they'll be then their brains will be monitored by the scientist. When people are not told about the brand when they are consuming, and the activities at the orbitofrontal cortex, and which is known for rational decision making, right? And when people are told that, okay, this is the brand that you're tasting, whether you're tasting Coke or Pepsi, and when they were told that they're tasting Coca-Cola, what happens is that there is an activity in the hippocampus of the brain. And the hippocampus and then dorsolateral prefrontal cortex got active, and these are the places for emotional decision making, which means people have more emotions towards Coca-Cola, and that's why the Coca-Cola brand is still being #1 in the globe, and they are taking a lot of advantage with that, right? But when they're told that they are consuming Pepsi, and these areas which is activated when they were told Coca-Cola was not active, okay? And that means like we have neural evidences, like evidence from the brain that saying why Coca-Cola is a dominant brand. And next study that we can talk about like how pricing and then decision making is happening. Okay, and this is another study conducted by Plassmann and from Inside Business School, and she is a very prominent neuroscientist, neuro-marketing scientist, and she has asked people to rate their pleasantness of what they feel about wine taste. Okay. And they were given like 2 set of wines, or like 4 set of wines. One is like they were given a $5 wine, and then $45 wine, and $10 wine, and $90 wine. And the surprising thing is that the wine is same, only the price were varied across the conditions, which means the same wine is tagged as $5 or $45 or like $10 or $90. When the prices varied, and also what varied is that their experienced pleasantness, in the sense what they experience when they consume the wine, will also varied. Okay, and this was captured by an fMRI machine, and the brain region that is related to experiential pleasantness, which is called as medial orbitofrontal cortex, was active when they were consuming higher price wines. Okay, which you can see in the green bar here. So what does it indicate? It indicates that when you're buying some costly stuff, especially when you're buying some products from Apple, or like when you're buying some cars like Audi, and you're paying a lot of money, and that when the price basically tells you how you feel about the product, and also how you infer the quality of the product, right? And you basically give more weightage to it, right? And this was not really assessed with any basic questionnaire, right? And because people can basically skew it, but still this was observed in the neural mechanism where the brain level data was acquired, and that says that higher prices will basically give more happiness and then more experienced pleasantness of participants. Okay. And the other neural measures that we have is called as magnetoencephalography. Right? And this is basically another version of studying brain signals. Okay, and this will have some sort of magnetic field around the brain. It will send some magnetic field around the brain. Since the brain also has some sort of neural circuits, and it has some electrical impulses, and what's the differences that is created by the magnetic field is measured, and that will be plotted. But there is not much studies available using MEG. Okay, and this is one thing that you are supposed to be aware of. Okay. And these are the techniques or like advances that is happening in consumer research, right? But where people are going in the future, and that is also important, right? And in the future, people are trying to study how your genetic composition can also result in certain shopping behavior. Okay, so it is not that they are trying to study only at the brain level. Now they are going at the DNA level. Okay, and they are trying to explore and phenologically whether I am able to decode people's behavior, whether I can find whether even genetical makeup, right? It's in general, people say that the women are really they want to shop a lot, and then they want to go for shopping, and males are not really doing that, right? But still, we do not really have evidences, right? Can we collect some DNA samples from some of the population, and then can we assess the DNA can decode some of the information like shopping behavior, right? Which is still under exploration. And also the other areas that is which is not related to the neuromechanism is called as like big data and then AI driven market research, where people are supposed to go and understand how these AI tools can be used in market research, and also how this big data, voluminous data that is coming from like a lot of shopping sites can be used to assess shoppers' behavior. Okay. And this is about advances in consumer research. And if you have any questions, and you can post it now. And thanks for being so patient to listen to me. And I was a bit fast because I wanted to really get get the information across, and like quite a lot of information across in a shorter span of time. When if you have any questions, you can ask me, or else post it in the chat box, and I'll try to address that to you. Anyone have any questions? Okay, so how do you see the challenges of this modern research in South Asian countries? Yeah, the major challenge that the South Asian countries are facing is that these techniques are not cheap. Right? And only now at the moment, the eye tracking devices are becoming cheap, and people are able to access it. Especially in India, you can see there are a couple of companies which works with the eye tracking, and because the eye tracking devices are normally around somewhere around 1 lakh to 2 lakh, okay? But at the moment now they are coming down to like 30,000 to 50,000 rupees, right? And also people since people are trying to work with eye tracking a lot, and the industries are also trying to reduce the price down, and also they are giving softwares that can be used by anyone else, like for each and every person can basically work with softwares and then find the patterns. So you don't really need some sort of like advanced programming techniques to understand it. But these techniques are supposed to be used in South Asian countries to understand our culture, right? Because we are culturally different compared to people in the Western world. Hence, there are like limited studies available in the South Asian perspective, and we are supposed to do it. Right? And there is one more question which talks about impact of consumer research in agriculture. See, agriculture is also another like these, especially when it comes to decision making studies, especially with neuromarketing studies, they are actually done on food. Like you can see, we studied about Coca-Cola, we studied about wine industry, and then wine industry is more related to agriculture, right? Because predominantly what we do is like we try to consume products, and even in my case, in one of my research, I'm trying to understand how people are consuming, how people are ready to consume organic food, and how can we make them to consume organic food. Right? In general, people do not really pay more for the organic food. Why? Because that is costly, and they don't really realize the value behind organic food. Right? And in my study, what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to present some sort of information, like how this label can be modified. And if you modify the label in terms of saying this organic food basically reduces carbon dioxide emissions by 10% or 20%. Right? If I do that, what will happen? Right? And this is another way that you can look at agriculture and the impact of agriculture supply chain in the industry of consumer research. Okay. And quite a lot of things that we can really do with agriculture, especially you can see how packaging can be done and how to package food, right? In one of the study, for example, say what they have done is like they packed yogurt, like tayir simple solana, and they packed in different variety of packages. And there is one package which is smooth and one package which is rough, which is kind of a cardboard, right, sheet. And they were asked to now people were asked to assess these two yogurts taste. And when they have given a package which is smooth, and basically people felt more no the yogurt is so smooth, and then it was tasty. But when they were given with when the yogurt was served in a rough package, what happened is that they did not really feel that okay, that is really smooth, and also it is not really tasting well. Okay, so food consumption and the food decision-oriented consumer research is really huge, and especially if you look at nudging and choice architecture, and we are working in that aspect as well. Okay. Hope I addressed your question, Vinod, and I'll move on to Professor Nitya's question. Yeah. So she's asking like whether we can know, do we have to use some of the softwares, right? If you look at Mouse Lab Web itself is a software, and anyone can just basically design such kind of matrix on their own, and it does not really require more learning in terms of technical things. And also, if you that is one part, okay. But in terms of eye tracking, so what I get is like from the eye tracking, it produces a lot of data, and what it produces that it produces a data called as fixation point, and it produces something called as a saccades and other things, right? And the rapid movement of eyes, right, from one point to other point, and these things will come as a kind of an Excel sheet, and for that. And there are softwares available to process it, like the companies which develop eye tracking devices, they also provide softwares. But if you want to have some specific understanding, what you're supposed to do is like you are supposed to run the data in R programming or like in Python to see what kind of patterns that you can extract from. Since these new techniques are producing different sort of results, like different, like quite a lot of data, and you are supposed to understand how to process data, and for that you are supposed to know some of the data science packages, like statistical software packages, was like R programming or like Python to work with. Okay. I hope that answered your question. And with Kavi Priya's question, would it be helpful for small scale businesses? For small scale businesses, one thing that we can work with this kind of mouse tracing can be worked because it is free, it is available for free, and you can basically ask your customers to you can develop a study with Mouse Lab Web, and then ask you can understand how the attributes are which attribute, like whether the price of your product or whether your some of the product attributes are really important, and you can easily find that one, right? And for that, maybe you need an expert in terms of analyzing the data. The major challenge comes in with the question that was asked by Professor Nitya, where because you're supposed to know some sort of statistical packages to analyze the data. And similarly, the eye tracking are coming really helpful and handy nowadays. But basically, we can also work the other way around. For example, say in case of one study that was conducted in a shopping mall, right? And that was just recorded with the CCTV. If you have a CCTV in your shopping premises, basically you can study your consumers, right? Why? Because you can see whether they are touching the product or not. And when they touch the product, the probability of buying is really high. Right? This was tested and then studied in the UK, right? So one of the person who came and delivered a lecture to us, he basically showed a video how the CCTV cameras can be used to study consumers. Okay, so instead of like just going for like neurological studies, you can basically use your CCTV camera in your shop to see whether people are touching the products or not, and how they are moving inside the store, right? And also if they are taking the product on their hand, and this you might have done it as well when you're going to the store, right? You will take the product and you will also shake the product to see whether the product is like having some sort of things that you're looking for. When you're taking milk, when you're taking egg, when you're taking coconuts, you basically do that, right? And what you're doing is like you're basically assessing the quality of the product, and also you're assessing the weight of the product. Like, this can be studied with a very small scale CCTV camera, which is already available in your business. Like, you don't have to go to the neuro mechanisms. Right? Try to use that one. I would recommend that rather than going for a kind of a major study. Okay, so there is one more question from Shira. So it's a kind of follow-up question. Can you comment on the return on okay? See, the return on the marketing research is really huge. Okay, so when they wanted to study Coke versus Pepsi, right? And they want to really decode and understand what's happening behind the screen. So whether they want to invest more in the advertisement, whether they want to connect more emotionally with the customers, right? And if you look at Coca-Cola, they invest more on advertising rather than they invest on the protection. And why do they do it? Because they want to emotionally tap into the minds of consumers, and they still have the same kind of slogan of like sharing happiness, right? And why do they do it? And why do they want to do it? They wanted to make it right. In a sense, they want to get it right, and they want to be the #1 brand all the time. right? And also similarly, if you look at advertising, right? So when you're posting advertising, you're spending a lot of money, and you're posting it on a TV shows, right? So you're spending like 5 crores, 10 crores, but do you think that's really working? And do you know whether it's working, right? In one study, for example, so they wanted to assess the music albums and whether they will be hitting in the getting whether they will get a hit in the market, right? Whether they can make money. And what happened is that when people are asked to listen to the musics, and people basically rated product A as the best, the music A as the best one, but it did not really work. But when they were asked, when they studied this neuromechanical, neural level patterns, and basically the neural pattern suggested that people will like music B. And after like few years of time, what happened, like few 2 to 3 years time, basically they understood that the music B is at the best, and that was selling really well. So what people report is different from what people actually do, and then they behave in the market. So the subconscious processes or the conscious processes are very different. Okay, so you'll get basically more return on investments when you try to use study and understand neural mechanisms. But the key challenge is that you are supposed to be aware that how the data is processed. And there's a new recent study, and with this the study says that if you process the data in a different way, and you get different results. Right? So you're supposed to be cautious in whom you're approaching. So you're supposed to approach the real kind of experts who are able to decode the brain level data. Yeah. And do you have any questions? Any other questions to be addressed? Thank you, Shriram. Okay, so if there are no questions, and then thanks for being a participant for the seminar, for this particular webinar. I really appreciate your patience, and then thanks for listening to me. And I wish you a nice day.
And thank you, Mr. Bala, for the wonderful session. It was very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashok. Wish you a nice day as well. Perfect. I'll see you all. I'm logging off.